So I want to tell you a story, an amazing story that Rebbetzin Kanievsky Batsheva, what she wrote. Just incredible. When she was a little girl, she lived in Mea She'arim. It was 1948. And the Arabs were throwing pagazim, they were throwing grenades and bombs all over Yerushalayim. And Rachmana Litzlan, I never knew this. She had a little sister, Rivka. And a bomb, a grenade fell on the roof of the house where Rabbi Elyashiv lived. It made a hole in the roof. It fell on the bed of that little girl, Rivka, and she was killed. So Batsheva Kanievsky had a little daughter. Of course, at that time, she was Batsheva Elyashiv. She had a little sister, Rivka, Nebuch, that was lost in the war in 48. Now, the Elyashiv decided they're going to move out of Mea She'arim. So they decided they're going to move to an area called Mishkanais. But the only problem with living in Mishkanais was that every makolet was not allowed to sell bread to a person unless they were registered. The Elyashiv family was not registered in Mishkanais. They were registered in Mea She'arim. So who's going to Mea She'arim to the makolet to get bread? So Batsheva Elyashiv at that time, she said she'll go. So her Zayda, Rab Aryeh Levine, said, I'm not letting you go alone. I'll go with you. And listen to this. Something else that we could absorb in our lives. As they were walking, she writes, my Zayda a whole time was saying the capital of Yoshev B'Seiser, which is known as Shir Shel Pigoim, the Shir that protects us from terrible things happening. And he kept on saying it as they were walking, and then suddenly they passed by a hospital. And Rabbi Aryeh Levine said, Sheva, you go alone. Go to the store. I have to go into the hospital. She said, Zayda, why are you leaving me alone? And you're going into the hospital. Listen to what he said. He said, first of all, I have to go be Mavaka Chayla. And even more than that, there are many people, Nebuch, that died. They're going to make a mass grave, and they're going to put all these people in one grave, and they're going to be so rushed they won't even write down who these people are. I want to go and I want to write down the name of every man that died so his wife won't be in Aguna. Could you imagine? And then Batsheva writes that her father, Rabbi Elyashiv, who was the Masmid Hadar, every few minutes he would stop his learning and he would ask, is Sheva back yet? Is Sheva back yet? Baruch Hashem, she made it, and everything was fine. But I learned a great lesson here. I learned the lesson that Yoshev B'Seiser is a very important capital to say. And we should be saying it every day as protection. So when I read this story, I started learning Yoshev B'Seiser. I wanted to see what is in it that talks about being protected. And I noticed Pasuk Yud Aleph. Pasuk Yud Aleph in Yud Beis, Ki Malachov Yitzav Eloch Lishmorcha B'chol Derachecha. My malachim, I'm going to command to protect you. That's why it's called Shir Shel Pagoyim. And when I heard this and I thought of this, it reminded me of a great story that will have an effect on every single one of us. There was a young woman in New York. She was in her early 40s. Her husband needed a very serious operation. They had had a number of children, and the doctor said, I cannot operate. I'm afraid to operate on your husband because he has to have a full anesthetic, obviously, and I'm afraid it'll be too strong and he could die on the table. I need a bigger authority than myself to rule whether he should have the operation. He said to the young woman, go find a higher authority than me. Of course, what he meant was that she should find a bigger doctor. She was thinking, who is the biggest authority? And then it occurred to her, you know something? My husband, who was a young man 20 years ago, he learned about Rav Moshe Feinstein. That's the biggest authority. I'm going to go, I'll ask Rav Moshe. So the doctor calls her up, and he says, did you find a bigger or higher authority? And he's waiting for an answer. Which doctor from which university or which hospital? She said, yeah, I found. He says, who? Which doctor? She said, well, it's not a doctor, it's a rabbi. He said, I don't believe it. What do you mean? A rabbi is going to rule whether I should make an operation? A rabbi who has no medical background? She said, listen, I trust him. My husband studied in his school, and I'm going to ask him. He said, do you mind if I go with you? I can't believe this. I've got to see this myself. How a rabbi is going to rule whether a person should have an operation. So she goes, the doctor goes, and her father goes. And they go to Rav Moshe's house in the Lower East Side, and they tell him the whole situation. Rav Moshe gives tremendous cover to this doctor. And he's asking him all the questions about his illness and the danger of the operation. And then Rav Moshe is trying to remember who this fellow was. She said he learned in the yeshiva 20 years before, but he didn't keep up with Rav Moshe. So finally she says, Rosh Yeshiva, I have a picture of what he looked like when he was learning at First Yerushalayim. So Rosh Yeshiva says, please, let me see the picture. And he takes a look at the picture, and suddenly he recognizes the boy. And he starts crying. And when he starts crying, the doctor turns to the woman and said, now I understand why he can make such a decision. And listen to what Rav Moshe said. Rav Moshe said he should have the operation, but he should make a Kabbalah that from now on he will always say brachas out loud, so that people should say Amen. And he should have other people say brachas out loud, so he will say Amen. And listen what Rav Moshe said, it would sound like a Hasidic Rebbe. He said, Amen, Aleph Mem Nun is equal 91. The word malach, angel, a protective angel, is equal 91. Mem Lamed Aleph Chof. He said every time you say Amen out loud, you create a new malach, and that malach will protect him. And the man had the operation, and he lived for another 6 years. And maybe that's what we should undertake tonight. From tonight on, let us make sure, we always tell our children to say brachas out loud. Let us begin from tonight on saying brachas out loud. Every time everybody in your family says Amen, you'll be able to create a malach. And look at the malachim will protect you. The malachim will protect our soldiers. They'll protect all the people in Eretz Yisrael. We need malachim to protect us. Ki malachav yitzav alach. So when I told this story over a few weeks ago, somebody says to me, do you know how old Rav Moshe was when he passed away? I said, no, I don't know. He said, 91. And I looked it up. It really was 91. He was a malach Elokim. And then, this past Thursday night, when I read this story about Yosef Beseser and Batsheva Kanievsky, you will never believe this. Do you know what capital Yosef Beseser is? Tzadik Aleph, 91. Unbelievable. So I haven't stopped telling the story. So somebody says to me, do you know what 91 is? He says, Aleph Daled Nun Yud. And Yud K Vav K is equal 91. Both shames of Hashem, both the names of Hashem. And it goes on and on and on, but it's incredible. So tonight, as part of our Shmiras HaLashon, to make sure that our mouth is pure, we must begin saying brachas out loud, to say Amen. It'll create malachim. It'll protect us. That's what the Chazam Sofer is telling us. Ched shachod l'shainam, your tongue is like a dagger. But if you control that dagger and you use it for good things, as Rav Moshe said, say Amen and build the malachim, then we'll be safe. That's one of the Kabbalahs that we have to make tonight.